In this video, I'm going to show you how to join your squares for your sock yarn blanket. I'm going to show you several different methods on how to do this. First, I will start by showing you how to join your squares so that you have a jagged edge on your border. The next way I will show you how to join your squares is if you were starting with one square only and you wanted to line your squares up. For instance, if you wanted them to line up with a straight border. So we're going to start with two squares, and I will show you how to join these squares so that you have a jagged edge. The easiest way to do this is to put your squares side by side and get your yarn ready. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick up stitches along this edge. If you remember correctly, we did special technique where we slipped the first stitch of the row purlwise and we knit the last stitch of the row through the back loop. And that's what created these nice chains that go up the side of the square. And we're going to use those chains in order to pick up stitches. Now, if you remember correctly, I am using 21 stitches for these squares. These are worsted weight squares, and I just made them a little bit smaller just so that I could whip through them a little bit more quickly for this tutorial. So the first thing I always do before I start picking up stitches is I count these chains that go up the side just to make sure that I have the right number in order to pick up stitches. And I have 10, which is what I need to have for 20 stitches. So we're going to get our yarn ready, and we're going to start with the first one. Now, I know that Shelley, in her instructions, these squares and the sock yarn blanket are a design by Shelley Kang. And I know in her notes, she says to pick up both of the parts of the chain. However, I found that it lies a little flatter if I only pick up the one side that's closest to me. And you always want to make sure that you are working with your right side facing you when you pick up your stitches for your square. So you're going to go ahead and just pick up and knit each one of these stitches, each one of these chains along the edge. And I like to count them ahead of time so that I don't have to count them when I am actually doing the pickup. It's not difficult to count, but it's just I like to count them ahead of time just to make sure if for some reason I didn't do the stitches correctly on the previous square. This way I know that I have to make a bit of an adjustment. Okay, so we're going to pick up 10 stitches along this square. Now, we do need to pick up an extra stitch between the squares, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick up an extra stitch right here on this one. It'll just make it that much easier. You can pick it up on either square, on the first square or the second square, whichever is best for you. Then we're going to pick up the stitches on the second square as well. So here are the squares, and your decreases are going up from here. And what you're doing is you're picking up stitches along this edge and along this edge in order to create this square. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to count the number of chains that are going up the side here. And I have 10 chains, so with the 11 that I picked up on this one, I will have 21. So I will go ahead and pick up these 10 chains, and again, I'm only going through that first, the one half of the chain that's closest to me. And I have my squares facing me. So now I have 21 stitches, and you will see how they are picked up. They're picked up along this edge and then this edge. And it does lay flat, but when the miter is created, you're going to have another line coming up from here for your double decreases. And from here, you're just going to go right ahead and start doing your rows, and you're going to start with a knit row on the back side, and you're going to slip the first stitch as if to purl, and then knit across. This is just how you did the first 2 squares. It's the same exact thing, except now we are joining squares. Instead of doing that provisional cast on, we are picking up stitches along the edge of already made squares. And when we get to the end of the row, we will knit the last stitch through the back loop. And I will just go ahead and show you one row of the double decrease. If you need more instruction on how to do this double decrease, or even do the first square, you can check out my other video on how to do the square. So again, I'm going to slip the first stitch as if to knit, and I'm going to knit across to the center 3 stitches. So I've come to the center 3 stitches. I'm going to slip 2 stitches as if to knit, and then I'm going to knit the next stitch, and then pass these 2 slip stitches over that knit stitch. And then I'm going to knit to the last stitch, and I'm going to knit the last stitch through the back loop. And you just continue in this fashion. So you knit a row on the back side, always knitting on the back side, and on the front side is where you are going to do the double decrease. So you knit one row on the back side and then do the double decrease on the front side. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this square just so that you can see what it looks like when it's all completed. Now, adding this extra square over here that doesn't have a adjoining square to pick it up on is going to work the same way as when you want to not have the jagged edge on your border, that when you want to have a straight edge. So I'm going to show you on a fresh square by itself. So this is how you would do it. Okay, so in order to pick up a square in this space here without having another square here, what we need to do is we need to cast on half of our stitches provisionally and then pick up the other half on the side of the square. Now, this is going to be the same way that you will do it if you don't want to have this jagged edge on your squares. So I'm going to show you how to do that on a fresh square. So here's the square, and I'm going to start by provisionally casting on 11 stitches because I am doing a 21 stitch square here. So I need to cast on half of my stitches plus that center stitch provisionally. Okay, so there's my first 11. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just be very careful, and I'm going to take out one of my needles, and I'm going to make sure that I keep this waste yarn wrapped around my yarn so that I do not lose that stitch. And then I'm going to pick up my square, and I'm going to start picking up my stitches along the edge of this square. And again, being very careful not to lose that first stitch. And I'm going to pick up 10 stitches along the edge of this square. And again, I'm only picking up the front leg of these stitches. So now I have picked up all 10 stitches, and I have my original 11 stitches from my provisional cast on. So I can go ahead and turn my work and work across on my knit row by slipping the first stitch as if to purl and knitting across to the last stitch. This is the same way whether you do it whether you're provisionally casting on the entire square, or if you're starting by joining squares, or if you're provisionally casting on half of the stitches and then the other half on a already completed square. And again, if you need additional information on how to start your first square, you can see my first video on the mitered square sock yarn blanket by Shelley Kang on my website. And now I'm at the end of my row, and I'm going to knit the last stitch to the back loop. Okay? And then I'm going to turn. And then again, I'm going to work across to the center 3 stitches. I'm going to do my double decrease, and then I'm going to continue on until this square is complete. And then I will come back and show you what it looks like. So here's how your first 2 squares will look if you don't want the jagged edge on your blanket such as this, and you want a straight edge. Now, you would also need to put another square here, and you would do the same thing that you did with this square. On this square, we cast on provisionally the first 10 or 11 stitches, and then we picked up the next 10 stitches along the edge of the square. And remember, you need to pick up the correct number of stitches for the number of stitches you want to use for your square. I'm using 21 here. For this square that will go in this spot here, you will start with picking up the 11 stitches here and then cast on provisionally the last 10 stitches. So this will give you that provisional cast on all the way around, so that when you go back to do a border, you can pick up those stitches and then do a knitted on border, or you could do an I-cord border or any other type of border that you would like to do, which will be coming up in my next tutorial, and that will be the knitted on I-cord border. So again, if you need more information on how to create your first square, you can go back to my tutorial on creating the first square of the sock yarn blanket, and you can find that at www.knittingblooms.com. And you can also read all of Shelley's information that she posted on her blog, and I will post that link here as well. I believe it's shelleykang.com, but I'm not 100% sure, and I don't have my notes here. So, that's how you join your squares, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you will come back and check out the next tutorial for the I-cord border. Thanks for watching.